everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Holland Land Office Museum's Artifact video series. My name is Ryan Duffy, and I'm the director of the museum. And this week we're going to talk about something very near and dear to the hearts of many Batavians, and that is the history of baseball in our city. Now, there's been a baseball team basically in Batavia stretching all the way back to the end of the 19th century. Its main history focuses from the creation of the Pony League in 1939 until the modern day. But going all the way back to the end of the 19th century, the first professional baseball team in Batavia actually came about in 1897 when a team was moved here from Pennsylvania as part of the New York League. Now, they were called the Giants officially, but they were most notably known as the Reds because they wore crimson uniforms. Now, the Reds were not a very good team and only lasted Batavia less than a season. In fact, they didn't even finish their first season because they were so bad. The team lost most of their games, and actually they were bad enough that people wouldn't even pay the 10 cents to go see them at their stadium on Swan Street. So before the end of the season, they actually moved to Geneva. So the history of the Batavia Reds, or Batavia Giants, was very short, but it is the first instance of a professional baseball team here in Batavia. However, with the loss of the Reds, baseball in Batavia still thrived very well and actually had a lot of semi-pro or club teams show up throughout the beginning of the 20th century. But Batavia baseball really took off with the creation of the Pony League in 1939. Now, the Pony League was the Pennsylvania, Ontario, New York League, and it had teams from all three areas, Batavia being one of the founding cities. The other original teams were in Hamilton, Olean, Bradford, Jamestown, and Niagara Falls. And Batavia is the only city that still has a team out of all of those. So it's been a lasting member of the league up until very recently. And actually, the formalization of the Pony League occurred here in Batavia at the Hotel Richmond. So Batavia is the founding city of the Pony League. Now, the team was called the Clippers in honor of Massey Harris, who was a big agricultural manufacturing company here in Batavia, and one of their main implements was called the Clipper, so that's where it came from. And Massey Harris was a major backer of the club in the very beginning. Now, the Clippers would find success under a manager named Jack Teague in the mid-1940s, and they actually won the Pony League in back-to-back years in 1945 and 1946. Now, into the 50s, the Clippers would be connected and gain some affiliations with major league teams, the first being the Cleveland Indians, and they would operate under the Indians' guises for several years. They would go through some difficulties during the 1950s and actually lose affiliation with the Indians and actually not operate for several years, the last year being 1960. But after that, they were able to pick things back up and actually won the league again in 1963. And we're actually under the affiliation of several other major league teams throughout their history. The first being the Pittsburgh Pirates for several years, and then moving on to the St. Louis Cardinals, then the Philadelphia Phillies, back to the St. Louis Cardinals, and the last affiliation up until this past few years was the Miami Marlins. Now, the Batavia team wasn't always known as the Clippers. Eventually, when Massey Harris left town and Eaton Industries, or Trojan as we know them better, took over and helped support the team, they were known as the Batavia Trojans. They also were known as the Batavia Pirates and Indians in retrospect to the major league affiliations they had. In the 1980s, they switched back to the Clippers in honor of the original name. But in the late 1990s, they were looking for an image change and put out a vote amongst the public on a new name. And the name they came up with was the Muckdogs, and it's what they're known as today. Now, you're probably asking, well, what is a muck dog? Well, it's a reference to the muck farmers who worked the land up in Elba, which was called the Mucklands, a very rich soil area, and that's where the term muck dogs came from. And right away, it actually became one of the most popular minor league logos and merchandise right away. Now, the early baseball teams, as I mentioned, played on Swan Street, but eventually they moved to Denio Street and MacArthur Park, where they played for basically the entirety. The initial stadium was called Holland Stadium after an executive at Doler Jarvis, but the current stadium is called Dwyer Stadium, which was completed in 1996, and it's named after Ed Dwyer, who was a major supporter of the team and was actually president of the baseball club for several decades. Now, the Muckdogs ceased to be in their prior form after the 2020 season, which was canceled due to the pandemic, and after that, Major League Baseball rearranged the minor league system, and Batavia wasn't welcome back as a host city. But however, we have baseball still going, as Batavia is now part of a new league. This new league is the PGCBL, or the Perfect Game Collegiate Baseball League, which, as it sounds, works with players in college as a sort of developmental league before they can maybe move on to higher levels. And it's part of a local league, which basically took over for the New York Penn League, which was the successor to the Pony League, which Batavia had been a part of. Now, baseball in Batavia has actually interacted with a lot of well-known individuals in the sport and other sports. Back in the 1920s, when the Yankees were doing sort of a spring training tour, Babe Ruth actually hit some home runs here in Batavia. Some other sports legends, John Elway hit his first home run as a minor leaguer here in Batavia, and Heisman Trophy winner Ricky Williams actually played some games here in Batavia before he made the switch permanently to football. But there's been a lot of famous baseball players to play here. An early one, well known, is Gene Baker, who played here and also managed here. And he was actually the first African American manager in the minor league. And it could be argued that he was actually the first African American manager in the major leagues after he subbed in for a manager who was ejected. And there's been other All-Stars. MVP Ryan Howard played here while part of the Philly system. Six-time All-Star Chase Utley played here, amongst many others. I know I'm focusing on more modern, but going back quite a ways. There's actually been 14 players from Genesee County to play here in Batavia, the last being in 1989 with Mickey High. So there's even been a lot of local connections here to the Batavia team. Now, even though the Batavia team is no longer part of the Major League system, it's still great to have Batavia baseball still being played at Dwyer Stadium, and will be kicking off relatively soon in 2021. But we do have a lot of things from Batavia's baseball past here at the museum, and we have a small little display up currently with all sorts of things going all the way back to the 19th century in terms of baseball here in Batavia, and things going back through the Clippers and the Trojans and the Muckdogs and everything in between. So if you're a baseball fan, like I know a lot of people out there are, come by and check out the museum and some of the cool things we have from baseball being played in Batavia. Well, I hope you enjoyed this edition of our Artifact video series. In case you've missed any in the past, you can check them out on our YouTube channel, Holland Land Office Museum. And if you would like, stick around with us in the future as we keep putting these out. And again, if you're interested in anything that you've come across in these videos and want to check them out for yourself in person, please stop by the museum and we'll be happy to show them off to you, maybe give you a little bit more information.